This is the OnePlus 13R, and it promises to deliver a lot of value at a lower price point, but to get there, you're gonna need to make some sacrifices. Let's talk about what those are. What's up, internet? I'm Brian MacDuff, aka BMac, and welcome to another video. So yes, indeed, today we're gonna be taking a look at this bad boy right here, the OnePlus 13R, and this is gonna be a budget-friendlier mid-range offering in the new OnePlus 13 series lineup. But before we get into it, I do need to give a huge thank you and a shout out to OnePlus for actually sending out a OnePlus 13R smartphone for me to be able to check out, use, and enjoy. So OnePlus, thank you. I appreciate you. But with that having been said, let's just get right into everything here, starting things out with the design of the OnePlus 13R and how this new mid-range smartphone is looking on the outside. One of the very first things you're gonna notice with the OnePlus 13R is how gosh darn flat it is, but also how gosh darn pretty it is as a result. On the 13R, you have a beautiful flat front glass, you have a gorgeous flat frosted back glass, and even matte finish aluminum sides in the frame. You of course still have the watch face inspired rear camera module protruding from the rest of the device itself, which even though it's not a full width camera module, still allows the device to lay flat and face up without any kind of wobble when you're using it. But one thing I do want to point out here is the switch from Gorilla Glass Victus 2, like we had with the OnePlus 12R, to the new Gorilla Glass 7i. Technically, 7i glass is a slight step down from Victus 2, but not by much, and actually in the lab testing, the two types of glass turned out to be pretty darn close in strength and durability, but we are getting a tiny bump in dust and water resistance, with the new rating being an IP65 rating instead of the IP64 rating we had previously. But do keep in mind that IP65 rating is still not enough to offer submersion protection, so you don't wanna go swimming with your OnePlus 13R in the pool anytime soon. For biometrics, we are once again getting an under-display finger scanner here, and even though it's an optical finger scanner and not an ultrasonic finger scanner, I still find it to be fast, reliable, and snappy. I really haven't had any problems with it. You do also get Face Unlock on the 13R, but like its older brother, the 13, it is gonna be limited to 2D based Face Unlock, which isn't nearly as secure enough for my needs and wants, but hopefully we get Class 3 biometrics on these devices in the very near future. The 13R weighs in at just about 200 grams. It's actually just a touch lighter than the other similarly sized smartphones that you might be used to. And in terms of colors, you actually only have two different colors to choose from this year, those colors being Nebula Noir or Astral Trail, basically fancy ways of saying black or white, with of course matching camera housings to go along with those colors. So let's take a few minutes here to talk about the display of the OnePlus 13R and how the smartphone is looking when you're actually looking at it. The OnePlus 13R is featuring a 6.78-inch 1:120Hz LTPO AMOLED always-on display with a resolution of 2780 by 1264 pixels, giving it a 450 pixel density rating and a 91.2% screen-to-body ratio. You're also getting full support for Dolby Vision, HDR10+, and HDR Vivid content, with brightness ratings giving you up to 4500 nits of peak brightness and up to 1600 nits of brightness in high brightness mode, which in my experience makes the display plenty bright enough in even the harshest and brightest of lighting conditions. So with a 10-bit rich and bright display experience that covers 100% of the P3 color space with impressive HDR support, I don't think you're going to be disappointed with the OnePlus 13R display. But now, of course, for the category that is always one of the most exciting, the cameras, and the kinds of photos and videos that the OnePlus 13R is capable of capturing. The OnePlus 13R is featuring 3 rear-facing cameras and 1 front-facing selfie camera, with a 50 megapixel f1.8 main wide-angle lens with OIS, a 50 megapixel f2 telephoto lens with a 2x optical zoom, an 8 megapixel f2.2 ultra-wide lens, and then a 16 megapixel f2.4 selfie lens. I would have liked to have seen optical image stabilization or OIS in the telephoto lens, but considering the telephoto lens itself is a new addition this year, I'll take that as a step in the right direction. In terms of video, the 13R is capable of shooting up to 4K 60 frames per second, or slow motion up to 1080p 240 frames per second. And you unfortunately don't get any kind of HDR video support, but I think for those of you who are looking at this device to begin with, that's probably not gonna be much of a deal breaker. But as you can see from some of the photo examples that I took on the 13R, I'm really happy and satisfied with the results. Especially when you're working with a lot of light, I found the photos to be nicely balanced with a wide dynamic range, displaying colors that pop nicely with a solid amount of contrast to back them up. Sharpening, for the most part, seems nicely tuned, but it does seem a little aggressive on certain photos, which helps to make detail pop, but that will at the same time also cause the photo to look a little less natural and a little more digital, but the results still look fantastic. They really look great, and maybe that added sharpening is the kind of look you're actually looking for. Portrait mode photos also look awesome. There is still no autofocus on the selfie camera, but I almost consider this a non-issue. One, because I rarely take any selfies, and two, because when I do, I find the focus to be fine. And of course, you do have some AI features built into the native camera app as well. You could add in some AI back to detail and clarity. You could use AI to remove some reflections, remove some people, or of course remove objects, all of which seem to work really, really well. But a huge part of what's allowing for the display and camera power is of course the OnePlus 13R performance. So what do we got going on the inside as it relates to hardware? The OnePlus 13R ships with a Snapdragon 8 Generation 3 chipset, which was the expected upgrade over last year's Snapdragon 8 Generation 2 chipset, with 256 gigs of local storage and 12 gigs of RAM as the only configuration option here in the United States. There is also a 512 gig storage option with 16 gigs of RAM available on the international market, and just like the OnePlus 13 with its international market version that's available, I wish that was available to us here in the United States. The 12 gigs of RAM that we're getting, on the other hand, I'm actually okay with here, especially since we do get dynamic RAM expansion, or DRE, on the 13R, which is a feature whereby the 13R could literally dip into and use some of its available storage on the device to actually expand the RAM. But with all that in mind, whether I was gaming, editing photos and videos, multitasking, you name it, I did not feel held back by the 13R at all. On top of that performance power, you do also get the return of the, for whatever reason, the beloved IR blaster. It is not something I often use, but I do think it's cool, and a lot of people love it, so you get it in the 13R here once again. Plus support for Bluetooth 5.4 and the SBC, AAC, LDAC, LDHC, and aptX and aptX HD audio codecs. I love to see this. I'm not even kidding when I say that the full support there of those multiple audio codecs alone would potentially be enough for me to seriously get the 13R as my main device, especially if I plan on using it to stream a lot of music to my various Bluetooth headphones and earbuds. Topping all that off, you are also getting a guaranteed 4 years of major Android updates and a guaranteed 6 years of security updates, effectively keeping your 13R software up to date until the year 2029 and secure until the year 2031, which is awesome and very reassuring to your investment in this device. But of course, a huge part of what makes any smartphone a viable option as your everyday smartphone is gonna be battery life. So how long could you actually expect the OnePlus 13R to last for? The 13R houses a commendable 6,000 mAh battery that's about 10% bigger than last year's model. However, this is gonna be a single cell battery this year compared to the dual cell battery that we got in the 12R, which is going to have a negative impact on your charging times, but we'll talk more about that in just a second. What's still very important to talk about is the overall battery life that you could expect to achieve on a full charge with the 13R, and when paired with that Snapdragon 8 Generation 3 chipset for better efficiency, I would say you could pretty comfortably expect to get at least 7 hours of screen on time, if not more, with this device. That's what I've personally been experiencing, and I usually have my settings set pretty high. I have seen other creators and reviewers actually saying that they could get 8, 9, sometimes even 10 hours of screen on time with the 13R, which is very impressive when you consider that this is still considered a mid-tier device. The OnePlus 13R does come with an 80-watt capable SuperVOOC charger in the box that is capable of charging the 13R, but only up to 55 watts here when you're using this setup in the United States, which actually is considered a downgrade from the 100-watt SuperVOOC charger that was included with the 12R that was capable of charging that device at up to 80 watts with the 12R in the US last year. I'm seeing around a 0 to 60% recharge in just around 30 minutes, and a full charge in about an hour or maybe a little bit more. So yes, you could recharge the 13R even faster than that, but I wanted to give you realistic expectations of the kind of charging speeds you could expect with the included materials for the 13R here in the United States right out of the box. But with all that in mind, here are my final thoughts on the OnePlus 13R and whether or not it's a mid-tier smartphone you should actually consider. Like I keep saying, when it comes down to it, the OnePlus 13R is really a story about sacrifices. And what I mean by sacrifices are the little sacrifices you're gonna need to make with the 13R if you want the new features and upgrades that it offers. So what exactly are those upgrades? Well, I would consider those to be a better design, better hardware, an improved battery life performance, an upgraded camera system, and an additional year of guaranteed major updates. And then those sacrifices, I would consider those to be a weaker front and back glass, a single cell battery instead of a dual cell battery, a slower recharge experience right out of the box, and a slight uptick in base price, but that's mostly because of that 256 gig base storage option. But for you, you're gonna have to take those upgrades and sacrifices and determine for yourself whether or not they are warranting the 13R worth upgrading to, or if you're gonna be hanging on to that 12R for at least a little bit longer. As always, for the latest deals, prices, promos, and information for the OnePlus 13R, you can of course always head to my affiliate link, bmac.link/OnePlus13R, or of course, as always, there will be clickable links in the video description box and in the comment section below, so check those out. I'm gonna go do a video game binge on this bad boy because believe it or not, it can handle it. I will see you guys in my next video.